This video was made possible thanks to the support of my YouTube members and my patrons. Pledge today and you can get early video access, your name in the credits, and more. Links in the description. When it comes to Russell T Davies's legacy in the annals of Doctor Who writers, there's something about his finales that just hit different. Sure, they were often too big for their own good, with big red button solutions and melodrama that stretched credibility, but more often than not they'd emotionally land like a jackhammer, paying off long-running character arcs, culminating the themes and mission statements of their respective seasons, whilst also delivering crowd-pleasing laughs and spectacle, before ripping your heart out. So when Russell was announced to be coming back as showrunner, I've got to admit, it was his approach to this finale that I was most excited to see. Obviously it's more of an uphill battle because of the reduced episode count, but clearly an effort has been made to sow some seeds leading to Season 1's finale, The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death. Over the previous 10 episodes, we've had numerous recurring mysteries, from the boss, the Sunday's neighbour Mrs. Flood, the strange noises the TARDIS has been making, the one who waits, just who Ruby Sunday's biological mother is, and most auspicious of all, the identity of whoever Susan Twist has been playing, as she's made an appearance in almost all of the episodes of this new era. She's essentially the new equivalent of the Bad Wolf phrase from Series 1. And much like Bad Wolf back in 2005, this recurring element even appears in the expanded media set around this season, from the BBC Books range.
A woman with strawberry blonde hair and wearing a yellow jumper and a badge that read Sue sat at a small desk near the front door. Ruby thought she looked familiar, but couldn't place where she knew her from.
To the Penguin audio adventures.
"Those must be the missing people," gasped Ruby, and then she spotted someone oddly familiar among the group. A greying blonde woman, perhaps 60-ish, staggering and dishevelled. Where had she seen her before?
And it's this element that is one of the driving mysteries of The Legend of Ruby Sunday, effectively acting as its inciting incident. Oh, and there's of course the small matter of Ruby's parentage to deal with, but before we can dive further into that, let me back up. But before we dive in, do me a massive favour and subscribe to the channel, especially if you're into Doctor Who videos, and also please hit the like button, leave any comment down below because it helps to appease the almighty YouTube algorithm. As you can see from the runtime of this video, it massively got away from me. These videos are weeks and months in the making, they take an awful lot of effort to put together, so it would be brilliant if you could subscribe and like, or become a patron, become a member, all of that good stuff. Anyway, let's dive into the finale. So the 15th Doctor and Ruby Sunday arrive back on present-day Earth looking for answers to this mysterious woman they've been seeing along their travels. It turns out UNIT, headed up by Kate Lethbridge-Stewart, have already been doing some digging of their own, with all roads leading to Susan Triad, a tech billionaire played by Susan Twist, who is about to announce a new technology to the world via a live broadcast. The Doctor goes to investigate, but along the way starts putting UNIT to work on figuring out who Ruby's real mother is, using a time window to boost the memory of a videotape of CCTV footage capturing her mother on that fateful Christmas in 2004. But an old foe is stirring in the shadows with a millennia-old vendetta against the Doctor, which not only threatens all life on Earth, but the universe itself. And as you can probably tell from that brief plot description, The Legend of Ruby Sunday is essentially dealing with 3 plot strands, and with the exception of it technically happening to our main characters, there's basically nothing that links them. While the pre-title sequence has this gorgeous scene of the TARDIS landing at UNIT HQ, carrying on the trend of the TARDIS doing almost anything but landing conventionally this season, it does feel like the Doctor and Ruby are just getting around to something that's not particularly urgent. Now, an initial draft of this episode had the Doctor and Ruby encountering a bunch of these Susan Twist characters across time and space in a montage, with one of the settings being Roswell, before it was cut for budget and logistical reasons. But in the finished version, without something actually prompting this effort to get UNIT involved, along with solving the mystery around Ruby, it means that The Legend of Ruby Sunday is awfully sluggish to get started and become interesting. Now, a slow, unassuming opening isn't necessarily a bad thing, and I think what Russell is wanting to do to compensate is to establish a modern UNIT family. In the 1970s, we had the Doctor, Liz, Joe, the Brigadier, Benton and Yates colloquially forming the UNIT family. And now in 2024, we have the Doctor, Kate, Ibrahim? I mean, no disrespect to actor Alexander Devrient, who I actually think is really underrated in this role, but who the hell is Ibrahim? We have the Vlinks, who still has a lot of context that needs filling, as I mentioned in my review of The Giggle. Osgood is nowhere to be seen. Shirley Ann Bingham has also disappeared, meaning we have another scientific advisor with Morris, played by Lenny Rush, and brand new head of archives, Harriet, played by Genesis Lanier. Yes, Mel, played by Bonnie Langford, is still here looking for something to do, but there's no sign of Donna, and... Wait, what is Rose doing here? I understand that UNIT is now essentially a Nepo baby institution for old companions at this point. We even have a potential relative of Harry Sullivan.
Sullivan, Taker, and Russ.
But it's hard to get invested in a new UNIT family if there's no consistency to it and no real rhyme, reason, or role for them to have here. But we'll touch more on that later. This pre-title sequence also tries to play into the idea of fan engagement and theorizing, the assumption being that Russell realizes that fans would notice the recurring Susan twist and spot that S-Triad is an anagram for TARDIS, or maybe it's calling back to the Doctor's granddaughter Susan, who was previously mentioned in The Devil's Cord. This is pretty hilarious in hindsight, because fans online immediately saw past the red herring the moment we learned that Susan Triad was the head of a tech company, but I guess that's the risk you take when you film episodes so far in advance, whilst also deliberately trying to outsmart an audience who have been watching this exact game play out for 20 years.
You are not alone.
But The Legend of Ruby Sunday opens this two-part finale in a pretty unorthodox way. Incredibly leisurely. Yeah, there's technically the ticking clock of Susan Triad's speech to the United Nations, but apart from that, the Doctor and UNIT are in absolutely no rush to figure out what's going on. The Doctor goes as far as to interrupt UNIT's investigation of Susan in order to drop the mystery of Ruby Sunday's parentage on their laps, and then the episode just becomes about that for the next 20 minutes. Once again, there's nothing inherently wrong with this, but it shows a real lack of focus or immediate stakes for what should be a story that's ratcheting up the tension. So it turns out that Susan Triad, despite initially being called an evil tech billionaire by Kate and Morris, with them even comparing her to someone in real life.
Evil genius with secret alien software. It's top of our list. God knows we stopped enough of them, except the obvious.
We'll get him.
But then the episode does an incredibly quick and invisible heel turn, because Susan is actually really nice.
Susan Triad turns out to be really nice.
So why even pull that thread of her being an evil genius? It just feels... I don't know, it feels like Russell wanted to take the jab, even if it didn't work in context, but he also didn't want to be too specific, so it feels strangely cowardly. I don't know, it's just really odd. And dulling the ticking clock aspect even further, Susan isn't even presenting her speech to a live audience, so that's just one less element that makes the stakes of the story feel way lower than they ideally should be. It just doesn't read as urgent as it should later on for Susan Triad to appear on stage for a live broadcast if there's no actual live audience in the room to appease, you know? But Susan Triad's tech company isn't even making its debut in the Whoniverse in this episode. In fact, it goes as far back as The Giggle.
Is this static or dynamic?
Dynamic. We're using Triad.
Oh, so UNIT was actively using technology from a company it, at the time, believed was hostile. Like, what is going on here? Once again, Russell has technically put in the work of sowing seeds building up to the finale, but it ignores the actual logistics of the story. It's like the whole Susan element. Okay, it's technically been set up in the Devil's Cord, but it seems to only really exist as a red herring and just serves to stop the plot dead so the Doctor and Ruby can do some Doctor Companion housekeeping about the idea of regeneration and the Doctor's past. But shouldn't all of this have been addressed earlier? Isn't the idea of the 15th Doctor that he's more open and emotionally available to his companions after his bi-generation therapy? And you'd think there might be a conflict between the Doctor and Ruby. I mean, just look at the Doctor and Kate's reactions to each other when Ruby starts asking questions.
Don't you recognise her?
But no, they just power on. Even the idea of the Doctor having companions before her, like Mel, just never prompts any sort of reaction from Ruby, positive or negative. Going way back to my review of Space Babies, I thought there might be a conflict down the road with the Doctor hiding from Ruby that he actually went back to Ruby Road the night she was born, but didn't find out who her mother was when he had the chance. But no, it turns out it's just accepted.
I've been to Ruby Road once and I can't cross over my own history. The one night that we need to see, and I have time locked myself out of it.
Oh, well, that's alright then. God forbid there's any actual conflict or disagreement between this TARDIS team. This is what I was talking about when I said this finale has such a leisurely opening. Once again, this can work, but you need to replace the immediate stakes with something, and this episode just doesn't. So the Doctor decides, mid-investigation into Susan Triad, that now is the perfect opportunity to figure out Ruby's parentage. You know, while he's in the neighbourhood, I guess. And Morris suggests that they can use UNIT technology to analyse the CCTV footage from the night she was abandoned.
Yeah, but look at our technology. We can sharpen the image.
I'm just going to hit the brakes here real quick and talk about Morris, played by Lenny Rush. In the recent history of Doctor Who guest actors, Lenny Rush is, for my money, one of the best gets the show has had. A breakout child star known for his role in Dodger alongside Ninth Doctor actor Christopher Eccleston, and his BAFTA-winning turn in Am I Being Unreasonable, Lenny was originally cast as the voice of Baby Eric in Space Babies. Heck, he even attended the cast read-through, but the team decided he was deserving of a larger role, and he was cast as the new UNIT scientific advisor, Morris, a child genius thanks to a passing asteroid. This is such a great idea for a character. Yes, there's the representation of disability with Lenny's dwarfism as a result of SED, but while a child genius in a family show like Doctor Who can come across as a bit twee, Lenny Rush avoids those pitfalls. He's such a bright comedic star with naturally brilliant instincts as a performer with stellar timing. This reads as a perfect combination of show and actor. Lenny's reactions to the mad adults around him, his reactions to the Doctor boosting up his technological achievements whilst still retaining his childlike wonder. Yeah, I have no notes here. So Ruby nips back home to see Carla and Cherry and pick up on the previously never-before-mentioned videotape.
The Legend of Ruby Sunday.
He said it!
Carla then decides to get involved. Don't worry, I'm sure she'll play a large role in the story. So gets neighbour Mrs. Flood, played by Anita Dobson, to look after grandmother Cherry, and she decides to just drop banger after banger.
Well, we'd all like a lot of things that aren't going to happen. He waits no more.
What follows is a pretty nice scene between the Doctor and Kate where she talks about the Doctor's legacy and impact on her life, even if it does contain this really baffling continuity change about the Doctor's children.
You can have a granddaughter before a daughter?
Life of a Time Lord.
This is such an odd inclusion. Not only has the show established that the Doctor has had children,
I was a dad once.
but I don't get why they would even complicate this in the first place. The Doctor can still have been a father and have those children die, but his granddaughter is still alive. Like, that's perfectly reasonable logistically. I'm not here to say, oh, this line in a 2006 episode means the canon is locked in forever. No, I honestly couldn't care less. But you've got to ask, why obfuscate this part of the character? Why make it more complicated? Ruby and Rose arrive back, bringing Carla Sunday with them, and despite it being against UNIT rules, the Doctor just lets her in the base anyway.
Yeah, but it's Carla. Come on. Fine, thanks.
Damn, that kind of hand-waving comes across like an excuse to get Carla in this story by any means necessary. That must mean it's vital for her to be here, and that she plays a really important role. Or maybe there's a conflict brewing between the Doctor and Kate Stewart that will play out over the next episode. And then what follows is the longest scene of the episode, the time window, where the Doctor, Ruby, Carla and the UNIT family head downstairs to solve the mystery of Ruby's parentage. And I love the Doctor's reaction to the time window.
This is rough.
Yeah, this is a fun reaction that's very in character for the Doctor. I can absolutely imagine other incarnations doing this. It's a brilliant set in terms of its size, and I love how it's filmed by director Jamie Donahue, having this large, dark space where most of the visual elements will be added in post to resemble a holographic churchyard. That can't have been an easy time shooting. Then there's lovely moments like this when the snow starts to fall around Ruby before they've even turned the machine on, the rising, revolving camera above the Doctor as the window opens, and the debris hitting the glass at the end, but Colonel Ibrahim doesn't even flinch. I love these shots. We also meet fellow Mancunian here, Colonel Winston Chidozi, played by Takia Newell, who's from Cheetham Hill, something the episode needs to establish so that when things start going wrong, he's able to recognise hell when he sees it.
Where are you?
I am in hell.
But because we're midway through part 1 of a two-parter, we can't start solving these mysteries of Ruby Sunday yet. We need to start asking more questions. It turns out that the mysterious figure's face cannot be seen under the cloak they're wearing.
That is more than just a glitch. It's like she's shadowed.
We also have the discrepancy of Ruby's mother just walking away in front of the Doctor in the church on Ruby Road, which is what the CCTV would have picked up. Then the Doctor's memory of the event changes in Space Babies, so she points towards him now, and that altered version is what's depicted in the time window. So what in the mother of goblins is going on here? I don't want you to think that this scene is just empty space, because there are some great moments here, like Ruby's pain at not being able to move or see her mother, Carla trying to reassure the mother when it's assumed that she's crying, and Morris's gamut of emotions, to the excitement of a working time window, to the terrifying shift when a demonic entity appears to envelop the Doctor's TARDIS in the window. It's mainly the actors doing the heavy lifting and elevating the material, but it's still great work. We also have the Doctor's insistence that he and Ruby stay still in the window, but he can send Chidozi to investigate behind the TARDIS against Kate's orders.
You said not to move.
I know.
I'm sorry, but why the hell is Chidozi's weapon raised for the entirety of this scene? It almost reads as parody. And this, inadvertently, leads to Chidozi's death, and this silent, furious glare from Kate. A very well acted moment, but this is never built upon, and the subtext of this moment happening just a few scenes after Kate talks about the Doctor bringing people joy is never explored. This, combined with the Doctor and Ruby having these massive communication discrepancies in their relationship that are never addressed or confronted, just makes me think that this era of Doctor Who is terrified of conflict, lest it get in the way of the fun good vibes of the UNIT family. Let's not forget that the Doctor learned a few minutes ago that UNIT, against his express instructions, were hiding a time window in the heart of London, and it's just played off as a joke.
Kate, do you have a time window?
What, you expressly told us in the 1970s UNIT was absolutely forbidden to experiment with any form of time technology.
Do you have a time window?
10 floors down.
Like, come on, why is there no drama in my drama series? All of this leads to this lengthy, visually interesting scene, essentially acting as a narrative, mystery, and character dead end. So why is it here? Well, believe it or not, it all leads back to the Doctor's first line in this scene. But let's rewind slightly. Over the course of the series, the audience have seen many attempts at figuring out Ruby's parentage, but to no avail. The TARDIS can't figure it out, an in-depth medical library thousands of years in the future comes up with nothing, not even a god of the pantheon can figure out the song in her heart. So, with that being said, why does the Doctor think that a time window in 2020's UNIT will be able to solve the mystery when all other avenues have failed? In fact, I don't think he does, because he dismisses the technology.
This is rough.
So, honest question, what are we even doing here? Believe it or not, I think I know what's happened here, and I think it's Russell T Davies just buying time and narratively procrastinating to get to the cliffhanger because he had to remove the original storyline of this episode. After the broadcast of the Season 2 finale, The Reality War, Russell T Davies wrote a feature in Doctor Who magazine outlining his plan for the 2 seasons. Originally, Season 1 Episode 7 had the working title of The Raid. You'd have these 2 opposing towers across 2020's London, Susan Triad's tower and the UNIT tower, with the objective in the episode being for the Doctor and UNIT to infiltrate the former in order to meet Susan Triad, whilst Mel is acting as their insider. Obviously, this was just an idea that had to be adjusted around other ideas that were becoming solidified, namely Susan becoming a more innocent figure in the narrative and also not wanting to be too derivative of what had come before, namely the Doctor breaking into the Shard in London via anti-mav motorbike in the Bells of St. John.
Did you even hear the word anti-grav?
Side note, I don't know what that is. Do you mean anti-mav? Did Matt Smith just read the line wrong and they just left it in? Sack Stephen Moffat. Anyway, so the original raid idea was scrapped, but now you have this gaping 30-minute hole in what's now The Legend of Ruby Sunday, and Russell just appears to fill it with busy work. That's why this story feels so meandering. That's why there's no sense of escalation until the Doctor and Mel actually get into Triad Tower, why the episode can only raise more questions and can't solve or confirm anything in this portion of the story, because this huge chunk of time was meant to be something entirely different. It would be like in Bad Wolf in Series 1 if the Ninth Doctor just stayed in the Big Brother house for 40 minutes before breaking out, and outside of those doors was the Floor 500 control room where he turns on the monitors and finds the Daleks floating outside. This means that the original beating heart of The Raid ends up being carved out and replaced with a scene where the Doctor and Mel walk into Triad Tower by flashing the psychic paper. But that logistical and narrative chasm in the plot was never substantively filled in. It's why the scene where the Doctor gets angry that he let one of the unit team die, only to get a pep talk from Mel, a great scene by the way, it's why it can't lead to anything more outside of that scene, because The Legend of Ruby Sunday was never designed from the ground up to have that subtext. It was never designed to contain that conflict. It's a hodgepodge opening chapter, malformed from the remnants of an original, much more action-packed concept. It's why lines or moments like this, which I'm sure landed really well originally.
It's a crude videotape of a snowstorm, 19 years old, kept under the bed in a shoebox. I was born for this.
Don't mean anything now. Like, we don't even know who you are or what your speciality is. You've had 1 minute of screen time before this line, Harriet, and I know I timed it. But I've got to admit here, the last few minutes of The Legend of Ruby Sunday are actually pretty well executed on a production level. It took forever, but now that we're in what I assume was the original endgame of The Raid, with the Doctor and Mel in Triad Tower about to confront Susan, the story can finally start raising the stakes and propelling the audience towards the ending cliffhanger. From the way the TARDIS is filmed as this really dark, ominous obelisk, and its blue paint job appearing to turn a few shades darker as it starts groaning again, like it had done in Wild Blue Yonder, The Devil's Cord and Rogue, Unit discovering that there is something attached to the Doctor's TARDIS, essentially inviting the main threat inside, Kate evacuating the floor, ordering Soldier Sullivan to get Ruby back to the time window as some sort of creature starts manifesting around the police box.
Warning. Manifestation.
Meanwhile, the Doctor and Mel end up meeting Susan, but they learn she's completely unaware of the bigger picture. She's just a puppet who has strange dreams.
Do you dream about being an ambulance?
I love that line. However, once again, there's just some really odd creative decisions that are doing their absolute best to hold back what should have been an effective cliffhanger. There's some odd choices, like why does Kate send Ruby to the time window? That's never explained. Also, she orders all non-essential staff to leave the floor due to the incredible danger implied by the Doctor's indestructible TARDIS turning against them.
All non-essential staff will clear the room right now. All non-essential staff out!
So, why does Rose stay? Not only is she clearly not essential, she literally said earlier that she's just given the lowly jobs.
They never give me proper work. They had me investigating shoplifting in Catford.
But she's only 15 or 16 years old. Come on, Kate, have some duty of care here. Morris is a child genius scientific advisor, so I can kind of understand why he's staying, even though I still think that's morally iffy at best, but there's absolutely no reason for Rose to stay. In fact, that reminds me, if Unit never give Rose proper work, then how does she know how to operate the time window downstairs?
Ruby, don't move. We need to keep the image fixed.
Is Rose a proper member of Unit or not? Once again, Russell wants Rose to be belittled by the organisation, but also play a key part within it, and it just doesn't cohere. And to top it all off, wouldn't it have been better if Harriet was helping to operate the time window, or at least the videotape's incorporation in it? She's literally the head of the archives, so she's more qualified than Rose is for this.
They had me investigating shoplifting in Catford.
It would even help establish Harriet more as a character or a member of the Unit family if she was involved in this scene before her heel turn at the end. But no, Russell T Davies wants a new Unit family, so almost everyone heads down to the time window, despite them having no role to play and nothing to say or do. Yes, on paper, it looks good to have a big ensemble cast, but you've got to ask yourself whether Rose, Mel, Carla and Ibrahim are contributing anything meaningful to the scene, and if they're not, what are they doing here other than just waiting for their chance to ask questions or say literally anything to remind you that they're there?
But what happened? What happened on that night?
Doctor! She's walking away!
Anyway, let's move on to Susan Triad's conference. So she's giving a live speech to the United Nations, and her company are going to pretend that there's a cheering live audience in attendance. Okay, but what does Triad Technologies actually do? This isn't an insignificant question, by the way. The third act hinges on the big bad of the finale creating a tech genius with the name of the Doctor's granddaughter specifically to lure him into a trap. Triad Technologies isn't a front either. Susan Triad does indeed create technologies because even UNIT uses them.
We're using Triad.
So what is Susan Triad speaking to the United Nations about, and who is she meant to represent? She walks onto the stage doing a dance that's a deliberate reference to former Prime Minister Theresa May's awkward dancing entrance at the 2018 Conservative Party conference to ABBA's Dancing Queen. At first I thought that this might have just been an ad-lib by Susan Twist, but no, according to the BBC Writers' Room shooting script, this was scripted. Sound of the crowd, wild, joy, whoops, cheering, like a stadium rally. Music blacks out as Susan Triad walks onto the stage. Susan does a mock Theresa May dance. There's an awful lot wrong with this. Firstly, writing this in 2022 or 2023 makes this feel astonishingly out of date and out of touch, let alone broadcasting it in 2024. Revolution of the Daleks in 2021 was able to get away with its Theresa May stand-in because she only stood down as Prime Minister 3 months before that episode was filmed, whereas for The Legend of Ruby Sunday, there have been 3 Prime Ministers since that happened. But it just further confuses who Susan Triad is meant to be. She's a billionaire tech CEO like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, but she's also meant to be like a political figure like Theresa May, but she's also meant to be a subversion because she's actually really nice and also a red herring who could be a Time Lord in disguise. Like, what on earth is going on here? Genuinely, I feel like I'm losing my mind trying to make sense of the creative decisions in this episode. As for her speech, it makes populist allusions to things that people are angry about in the 2020s.
The tech billionaires, we've taken your money, while our technology spreads lies and fraud and riots. But no more. It ends today.
But what is she planning to do about it? What does her technology do? She's speaking to the United Nations, but her speech is written like she's at a public rally. If that's the case, who else is watching this rally? And I don't think I'm being unreasonable here. These questions matter because they're at the heart of the escalating stakes. Susan Triad is the centre of Mavity around which this whole episode, this whole season in fact, revolves, and we don't know anything about what she's doing. It's so shallow, it's so out of touch, it's so nondescript to the point that it almost feels like laziness. This doesn't even remotely feel like the same writer who gave us Years and Years, or heck, even Aliens of London. Here it's just newsworthy sounding lip service in lieu of actually giving us concrete specifics or making a statement other than, yeah, tech CEOs, they do bad things, don't they?
Please clap.
You know it's bad when another sci-fi series tried to pull this in 2015's Terminator Genesis, and even the titular Genesis app was better explained and better defined than whatever this is. It's quite frankly embarrassing writing. But there are some cool moments here, like Genesis Linear as Harriet getting possessed as the tears stream from her unblinking eyes, and Susan starts getting jolted in and out of reality, though the reveal that Harriet's last name is Arbinger, as in Harbinger, once again, deeply embarrassing. Not only is it a lazy reveal, but the fact that audiences didn't even have the opportunity to figure it out by themselves earlier by showing a name tag or a dossier or something, it just makes it feel unearned as a twist reveal. And then, as the entity starts manifesting at UNIT, and the auto-cue text gets corrupted to reveal that something is returning, the Triad technology starts shifting on a random monitor, revealing that the big bad is actually Sutekh. Yep. The Legend of Ruby Sunday is a sequel to the Fourth Doctor Season 13 story, Pyramids of Mars.
It was the wrong anagram.
Okay, That's not how anagrams work. I'm not even being pedantic here. You can see that the episode literally has to con audiences to make the wordplay work. You can see the original logo here, Triad Technology. Then it has to add Susan, abbreviate that to Sue, remove Triad completely, abbreviate it further, and then add a K. Not only is that not how anagrams work, but it's not wordplay at that point, it's just flat out cheating. The funniest part about this wordplay reveal to me is that in 2002, before Doctor Who's revival was on the table, Bernie Summerfield writer and Faction Paradox creator Lawrence Miles pitched a novel to BBC Books, which would see the Doctor arriving on Earth in the early 2000s and would become bored senseless because nothing was happening. The book, titled 333, had a line in it where a bored Doctor thought that he had discovered a death cult trying to reconfigure the internet to summon an ancient doomsday god. But it turned out that SUTEC was just an IT firm run by someone called Sue. The idea of SUTEC the Destroyer coming back to Earth through the wordplay of SUTEC not only had already been thought of, but it was done as a joke. It was a joke! And here we are in 2024 where Rusty Davies plays it completely straight. It's...
Cringe. There's no other word for it. This makes me cringe. It's embarrassing.
But whatever, I can look past the bad wordplay. It just seems a bit strange that professional writer Russell T Davies doesn't know what an anagram is, but there's a much bigger issue at play here, and it's actually a conceptual one. Over the course of the broadcast of Season 1, I was in communication with family and friends talking about the season. Every Saturday, I'd get messages from people wanting to share their thoughts on the episodes, from Space Babies to Rogue. For those 6 weeks, the messages were mostly positive. However, after the broadcast of The Legend of Ruby Sunday, the messages that came in were ones of bewilderment. Like, they were just flat out confused by that ending cliffhanger. And whenever I told Doctor Who fans this, they just didn't get it. Like, this cliffhanger is just like something from Rusty Davies' first era, right? Like Bad Wolf, Army of Ghosts, or Utopia. Why did those villain reveals work there, but this one didn't? Well, after chatting to my friends and family about it, I think I figured it out. And it all comes back to Susan. Oh no, not that one. This one. Susan Foreman, the Doctor's granddaughter, is essentially a red herring here. So apparently SUTEC the Destroyer deliberately used the Doctor's lost family to lure him into this trap. That's its own problem, but we'll touch on that later. This two-parter is a massive Gordian knot of problems, and if we don't deal with this strand now, we may never get back to it. Susan is mentioned once in The Devil's Cord, but that's it until 5 episodes later at the start of The Legend of Ruby Sunday, when a lot of focus is given to what turns out to be a red herring that is never actually grounded in the story itself. We don't even get archive footage of Susan until the next episode, after the thread has already been dropped. So when chatting to my friends about this cliffhanger, they were confused because the episode buried the Susan lead too much. They were confused because Susan, a character who hasn't travelled with the Doctor since 1964 and is not even from the same era of the programme as SUTEC, different Doctors, different decade, different dynamic dramatically, so the Susan connection feels so half-assed, but they focused on it so much that the SUTEC reveal just comes across as so out of nowhere and unearned. It's not like the Master appearing at the end of Utopia after 3 seasons of having the weight of the 9th and 10th Doctors being the last of the Time Lords having had time to play it out. The 15th Doctor hasn't been despondent over Susan or actively sought her out this season. No, the idea that Susan Triad is Susan Foreman is something that Ruby just randomly brings up at the start of the episode, and everyone just runs with it. Like, Susan isn't just a name that some people are called sometimes. If her last name was Foreman or something similar, then maybe? But no, Russell needs her last name to be Triad so that the S-Triad can be a TARDIS anagram to act as another red herring that fans didn't believe for a second in a failed attempt to be smarter than the viewers. And so committed to this red herring of Susan, the episode even butchers the Doctor's explanation of regeneration to Ruby so they can lead with the disguise angle first, as opposed to being, you know, a way to halt death itself.
Time Lords can regenerate their faces, like a disguise.
What an odd thing to say.
There's also the timing of the cliffhanger. The cliffhanger of The Legend of Ruby Sunday is twofold. 1, SUTEC is back. 2, Ruby is in the time window and her mother is there. That's it. It's not Sutekh doing anything, it's just him arriving. Contrast this with a similar reveal in Utopia. Yes, the cliffhanger is, in part, that the Master has returned, but when he reveals himself textually, there's still 5 minutes of the episode left, including the credits. In that time, the Master, who it turns out was assuming the identity of Professor Yana, his own fully fleshed out character who the Doctor and presumably the audience grew to like, kills his companion surrogate Chantho, lets the cannibalistic future kind inside the base, the shuttle leaves for Utopia with no guarantee of survival, the Master steals the Doctor's TARDIS, regenerates into a new, younger, stronger body with a voice that Martha recognises, and leaves our heroes in a room with a broken lock on the door as the future kind are forcing their way in. Now compare that to The Legend of Ruby Sunday. Sutekh appears, revealing Susan Foreman to have been a red herring. Susan Triad transforms into some sort of vessel for him, killing one of her staff members, a character who is never named on screen. According to the ending credits, his name is Bailey. She then reaches out her arm to presumably do the same to the Doctor, who just stands there, not escaping. Meanwhile, another manifestation appears in front of UNIT and looks very mean towards the camera, and Ruby is stuck in a snowstorm inside the time window as her mother appears. There's not enough time here for Sutekh to actually make an impact in this episode to the uninitiated, aside from turning an unnamed PA into dust, whereas in Utopia we get the reveal of the Master, and even if the audience have no idea who that is, we still have 5 more minutes for him to make an impact. Make no mistake, the cliffhanger to The Legend of Ruby Sunday is the reveal. That's all this is. And whether you want to admit it or not, previous Russell T Davies cliffhangers were significantly more than just reveals. And once again, we return to the raid concept. In the original version, Mel, working undercover, would report back to UNIT that Susan, despite being surrounded by layers of security, would always be left alone to open a large metal door in her office. In that room was a portal to null space, where she'd communicate with Sutekh. This was obviously a version of the story where Susan was more aware of what was happening, but it makes for a more organic ending because it's actually setting something up here for the cliffhanger and fleshing out Susan as more of a character to get attached to. Instead, Sutekh just kind of comes out of nowhere, apart from some superficial the one who waits lip service. So if you don't know who Sutekh is, if you're not clued in enough to know about a single story that broadcast almost 50 years ago that hasn't had a modern home media release since a DVD reissue in 2013, then I'm sorry. There's nothing here for you. This was the issue that my friends and presumably many other casual viewers had with this ending. For a whole season, they'd been sold a narrative that this new era of the show was a fresh start. It was something for a new audience and you didn't need to do any homework apart from a few fun throwaway references.
The Rani!
See, nothing important. You didn't need to know any of this stuff to enjoy it.
Exactly. It keeps moving on. It literally, here it is 61 years old. And the marvellous thing is the past 61 years don't matter. It's here, it's now, it's new, it's fresh, it's for you.
And for 7 episodes, that held true. But then, in the closing minute of The Legend of Ruby Sunday, that narrative was revealed to have been a lie. That Doctor Who was not only still insider baseball and dependent on knowledge dating back almost 50 years, but that's all it was for this season's finale and sole cliffhanger, to the extent that even the red herring was a reference to a character dating back over 60 years. And keep in mind that this doesn't just impact UK viewers. This season is on Disney Plus internationally, a streaming service with 100 million subscribers and potential new viewers outside of the UK. So why on earth make the foundational enjoyment and engagement of your cliffhanger lead into the finale dependent on knowledge from 50 years ago that the vast majority of international viewers won't be able to access or even be able to legally watch without access to multiple streaming services or out-of-print foreign DVDs? I'm not saying you can't do a sequel to Pyramids of Mars. I'm not saying that's off limits. But you've got to actually put in the legwork so the uninitiated are on board. And this episode, I was going to say it doesn't even bother, but it's worse than that. It actively puts in the effort to be as obtuse and inaccessible to new audiences as possible. Sutekh is a popular villain amongst fans because he starred in an incredibly well-received 4 episodes nearly 50 years ago. he's also his own character, which requires a different approach as opposed to a returning species like the Daleks or the Cybermen. But even then, the Daleks were a cultural icon with their own Beatles-style mania in the 60s. They appeared in films, merchandise, parodies, adverts. Even if you haven't watched Doctor Who, you likely know the outline of a Dalek. And even the Cybermen, while they're not nearly as prolific, them walking outside of St. Paul's Cathedral in The Invasion in the 1960s is a genuine piece of UK pop culture iconography, and their much more manageable costumes meant they could easily make more public appearances to ingratiate themselves in pop culture.
That's us! I'm running the whole ball game now. The opposition have been brought to their knees. The unions have had their knees removed, and the wets have been dried over an open fire.
But despite all of that cultural fortitude, the Daleks were still effectively reintroduced and recontextualized in Dalek in 2005, so the uninitiated were on board. The Cybermen were given their own new alternative world in Rise of the Cybermen to establish themselves in. Davros, a character in his own right more akin to Sutekh, is teased throughout the Stolen Earth and gets revealed in a complete scene with the Doctor over video screen to establish who he is before the episode can start heading towards the main cliffhanger. Sutekh has neither that fortitude or an appropriate reintroduction or adequate placement in the structure of the episode to make an impression. He reappears after not being mentioned on screen for nearly 50 years with no lead-in. In fact, his lead-in is reserved for Mrs. not appearing in this season, materializing in front of a group of characters, only one of whom actually knows who he is, and then proceeds to do practically nothing before the credits roll. You could literally replace him with a Zarbi, and nothing would change. Yeah, some viewers might recognise the voice actor, Gabriel Wolfe, after his appearance in 2006's The Impossible Planet, where he voices the Beast, but then you're just forced to contend with the idea that it was a much better and more effective idea to have a brand new entity with a cool bit of fan service casting nearly 20 years ago, and that this is just a pale imitation of much better material. Honestly, I'm kind of amazed that I've managed to write 16 pages of material for The Legend of Ruby Sunday, because there's actually not a lot to it. It's mainly a fascinating example of how not to structure the opening half of a story. There's no conflict to be found between the characters, there's no actual tension or escalation until the third act, meaning the story is just spinning its wheels with busy work and adding more to the ongoing mystery of Ruby's parentage rather than drip-feeding solutions to us. Compare it to the unravelling conspiracy at the heart of Bad Wolf, or the world building of the Ghosts and Torchwood in Army of Ghosts, or even the introduction of a beloved new character in Yana in Utopia, and The Legend of Ruby Sunday is just a baffling drop-off in quality. Despite Russell T Davies once upon a time, he once knew how to do this. I will say this is a very good looking finale. I really like the opening of the Doctor landing the TARDIS at Unit HQ. Like I said, I think Jamie Donahue's direction is really strong. There's some wonderful visual moments, the performances are great, and I do love Murray Gold's music in the third act as Sutekh is being revealed. I think a lot of the ending's impact, text aside, is down to editor Ben Drury, picking these really impactful takes and moments. There's great cutaways, just brilliantly timed with the cast giving it their all, to sell a cliffhanger that isn't even remotely earned. Maybe I'm putting too much stock in this theory, but I do think it all goes back to the Raid initial concept. An action-packed heist to break into Triad Tower would actually alleviate a lot of this episode's issues, but with it missing, it just has nothing, except an ending cliffhanger which doesn't feel earned and lands with a resounding thud if Doctor Who isn't your primary hobby. There's just nothing here, folks. For some fans, this is a cool cliffhanger, or maybe for some fans it's just a weak one. But for me, this is the moment that the Bad Wolf Enterprise under Russell T Davies started to completely unravel. For many viewers, this was the point of no return for them, when they learned the hard way that this franchise just wasn't for them, and that indeed they were actively misled into believing that it could have been. But hey, that's just The Legend of Ruby Sunday. Maybe things can pick up for the next episode, Empire of Death, right? Right?
Will, are you ready to watch Garfield at midnight? Excellent. Come right this way.
Hi there everyone, I'm Millie Gibson and I play Ruby Sunday in Doctor Who, and I just want to say a big thank you for you all coming out so late on a Friday night. We're so proud to show you the season finale. Everyone put their hearts and soul into it and I really hope you enjoy it. And it all comes down to a huge conclusion. I promise all of your questions will get answered tonight. Well, most of them. But you'll have to watch and find out. And really, I wanted to say thank you for watching for all these weeks. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Now buckle in, phones off, here it comes. The end of the story of the church on Ruby Road and the legend of Ruby Sunday, all in one. Have fun. Bye.
Garfield was barely in it.
Really, yeah. Expecting more of him.
The pick and mix came with orange jazzles.
Oh, for goodness sake, you know, orange Twitter. It's all he's been on about.
They've got orange jazzles in the pick and mix at the Odeon now.
You don't even get a pick and mix. You just got a cup of orange jazzles. Yeah.
It was that was an episode.
It was.
I'm sure everyone really liked it, and there were no complaints from fans.
No complaints.
No controversy.
I've not looked on the internet.
No
I'm
discourse.
assuming it's nothing but praise.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was happy, and no one was expecting Susan to show up or
the trickster. No.
Trickster, the Mara.
Yeah.
Big snake.
Big snake. No.
Yeah.
No. 0 big snakes out of 10.
Is it? Yeah. Was there any touching grass, by the way?
Oh, was there grass in that episode?
I actually don't think there was. I don't think there was no grass.
They didn't go back
Zero
on
grass.
Oh.
I'm going to try and not have the movie-going experience of watching Empire of Death skew my perceptions of this episode, but I've got to say, walking into that screening full of other Doctor Who fans who wanted to be there, who were excited to be there, and then we all walk out of that screening and it feels like a wake. So, let me talk about why Empire of Death is not only the worst thing that Russell T Davies has written for the programme, but is just a top-to-bottom disaster of an episode. So for some reason, the episode opens with Sutekh using his Dust of Death, patent pending, to kill everyone on Earth except for the Doctor and Mel, who were able to escape, and Ruby, who was safe in the time window, despite Sutekh already being in the time window, so I don't get how that works.
Get out, Bunker 17 now.
Did the Doctor send Sullivan to die here? Now I say for some reason, because I don't understand why this wasn't the cliffhanger to The Legend of Ruby Sunday, because it would actually show Sutekh, you know, doing something. We know that Russell T Davies is trying to emulate the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it kind of feels like he forgot that Infinity War's cliffhanger had Thanos executing his plan before the ending credits. However, while there is something to be said for the opening of Empire of Death showcasing the main villain essentially achieving his victory in his war on life, it does feel like the stakes are now too high and that there's nowhere else for the episode to go. Even Mrs. Flood is killed, lamenting that her mystery box will go unopened for another season, so we know that this is just going to be reversed, probably with some big red button equivalent. That's the problem when the episode opens with maximum death. It kind of means that the worst has already happened at the start of the episode, and now you're filling time until the big fix. Going back to the MCU, one reason why Endgame was so satisfying was because audiences had a whole year to sit on the loss of their favourite characters before the survivors could save the day. I understand there's only a 1 week gap between episodes for a TV series, but you could try and emulate that here to some extent to make the loss of these characters hit harder. That being said, yeah, it's pretty gruesome to see a bus full of civilians get turned into dust on the ground level. I just wish Kate Stewart wasn't given the worst dialogue imaginable, which just feels so random and out of place.
Birds will sing again. There will be birds.
Oh, but before that, Unit opens fire on Sutekh and Morris just has machine guns in his Segway. I understand that this is meant to be building on the joke from Shirley in The Star Beast that all disabled people have weapons in their mobility equipment, but Morris is a child, come on! There's that infamous interview where Russell T Davies justifies his redesign of the 15th Doctor's sonic screwdriver so it looks more like a remote control because he didn't want it to look like children playing with guns, a kind of justified fear if you have a black doctor appealing to a new generation of kids and a potential new American audience where police tend to shoot non-white children indiscriminately if they're holding literally anything. But how does that square with Russell literally giving children automatic weapons in the episode itself? And just what in tarnation is Rose doing here? She's just on a tablet, so is she controlling the turrets? Once again, she's in her mid-teens, and in the last episode, she was complaining that she wasn't given any real jobs.
They never give me proper work. They had me investigating shoplifting in Catford.
But apparently, she has access to UNIT's alien fighting weaponry?
Am I going completely mad?
God, back in 2008, Davros laid into the Doctor, allegedly turning his companions into weapons, but here we just have friends of the Doctor acting as literal child soldiers, and the episode has nothing to say about that. But yeah, UNIT dies, and the Doctor has his long-awaited reunion with Sutekh, and this scene of exposition really is where everything in this episode starts falling apart, and it's mainly down to a complete misunderstanding of Pyramids of Mars. Like I said, there's nothing wrong in principle in doing a sequel to a beloved story, but if you're going to draw those comparisons, you need to make sure everything lines up, or if it doesn't, it has justification. Pyramids of Mars frequently tops fan polls for the greatest Doctor Who story of all time. It's a high point of the classic series in an era already considered a high point in Tom Baker's second season, a story where the Fourth Doctor and companion Sarah Jane Smith arrive in 1911 and discover that the gods of Egypt were actually cosmic alien beings, with the strongest of all being Sutekh the Destroyer, voiced by Gabriel Wolfe. Sutekh, wanting to bring nothing but death to all life in the universe, was defeated and bound by his fellow Osirans on Mars, and he starts remotely engineering events on Earth to free himself. Sutekh is an incredibly powerful being, but he's also a fascinating character, who, through cosmic divination, is compelled to destroy all life, because that's just who he is.
You will seek out and destroy my enemies. The alien who dares to intrude, the humans, animals, birds, fish, reptiles. All life is my enemy.
But he's not a mindless killer. He's self-aware, he's calculating, he's incredibly intelligent, patient, and will refrain from murder if it will benefit his long-term goal. He's telepathic, can inflict torture on his enemies with a thought, can possess others, and his mind is mighty enough to infiltrate the Doctor's TARDIS. He sees Time Lords like the Doctor as grovelling insects, with his immense power giving him a superiority complex. He resents that his fellow Osirans, led by his brother Horus, the god of light, were able to imprison him on Mars for 7,000 years in a building composed of puzzle chambers.
Horus, think you can confound Sutekh with these childish stratagems?
The story is also given great stakes, because the Fourth Doctor even shows Sarah Jane what will happen if they don't intervene, how Sutekh's power is able to transcend time and destroy the future that she came from. This scene was even remade in this season's The Devil's Chord, with the 15th Doctor showing Ruby her world after Maestro removes music in the 1960s. In the end, he's defeated by a temporal trap laid by Horus and helped by the Doctor as he's sent forward in time, essentially aging to death. It's a brilliant story, and we already knew that Russell T Davies loved it, not because he's a Doctor Who fan, and not because he partially remade a scene in The Devil's Chord, but because he put it in the pilot episode of his breakout series Queer as Folk all the way back in 1999. One of the main characters, Vince, played by Craig Kelly, is a huge Doctor Who fan, and in the pilot episode, after a night of drug-fueled gay sex, goes to watch Pyramids of Mars in his flat on VHS.
I bring Sutekh's gift of death to all humanity.
So if you're going to do a half-century later sequel to a beloved story, you're going to have to make sure that you get it right. Everything you've done up until this point has alienated casual viewers, and you've told them that they're not invited to this finale. So this is a finale for hardcore fans and them alone. So as a result, you've got to make sure that all of the details and all of the characters line up with the original in order to please those hardcore fans.
Pain. Pain. Pain.
So, this is what happened at the end of Pyramids of Mars. Sutekh was caught in a temporal trap where he ages to death. However, Empire of Death establishes that Sutekh somehow attached himself to the TARDIS after the events of that story, and has been invisibly riding the Doctor's ship for the past... Hold on. So, if Trial of a Time Lord counts as 14 episodes, remove the minisodes, carry the TV movie, 427 episodes. So Sutekh has been attached to the Doctor's TARDIS quite literally, as we're gifted this unintentionally hilarious image of Sutekh in giant dog form clinging onto the spinning police box in the vortex for the past 427 episodes, gaining power from the time vortex, taking on this new form as a massive dog with the TARDIS at the centre of it. And get this, Sutekh's big revenge plan against the Doctor involves travelling wherever the TARDIS lands, and everywhere it does, Sutekh births a Susan Triad clone? Something to do with the TARDIS's perception filter, I don't know. But that's why there have been numerous characters played by Susan Twist during this era. Now you'd think that since these Susans have only been appearing since Wild Blue Yonder, that it was Donna spilling her coffee on the TARDIS console at the end of the Star Beast that woke Sutekh up, and when he started enacting his plan. And that would make sense, because it's there when the TARDIS first started making the groaning noises. But no. The episode goes to great pains to say that this has actually been happening since the end of Pyramids of Mars 50 years ago. Once again, overcomplicating things and obfuscating the lore for no apparent reason.
And the marvellous thing is the past 61 years don't matter. It's here, it's now, it's new.
What a fucking liar, dude. What a fucking Weasley little liar, dude. What a fucking Weasley little liar, dude. Holy shit, dude.
Excuse me.
Holy fucking shit, dude.
So, what's the purpose of these Susans? Well, after the TARDIS lands enough times and creates enough Susans on Earth, they collectively form what can only be described as a Super Susan, if you will, which is the Susan Triad at the centre of the last episode on 2024 Earth. And this Susan, deliberately borrowing the name of the Doctor's lost granddaughter, with her tech company and last name Triad being an anagram of TARDIS, would lure the Doctor in to try and learn what she was up to, so that Sutekh can dramatically reveal himself so he can just kill everyone. Right, quick question. Why doesn't Sutekh just skip right to the end? And no, that is not an unreasonable question. Sutekh is the god of death. Pyramids of Mars establishes him as an incredibly efficient and direct antagonist with a clear end goal. He resents the busy work and the meandering and the
childish stratagems.
The idea of Sutekh having an elaborate plan in the first place is pure busy work and character assassination. Sutekh isn't someone you can easily manipulate. He's not someone who will lose sight of their goals to chase petty revenge. He's someone who wants to kill and leave nothing but dust and darkness in his wake because he finds it good. And this isn't me overanalyzing a children's program from 50 years ago, by the way. This is literally the surface level text of the episode.
Where I tread, I leave nothing but dust. Darkness, I find that good.
The idea that Sutekh would lower himself to a revenge scheme against the Doctor across 50 years of TV history is such a basic misunderstanding of Sutekh as a character that all the material differences come across as petty in comparison. I mean, we will get to those petty differences later, but I think it's important to lead with that fundamental one. Sutekh creates Susans everywhere the Doctor lands instead of just ending creation right there and then, because he learned that the Doctor once had a granddaughter called Susan and just made it his entire personality. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration. He didn't make Susan his entire personality. He made solving this season's mystery box his whole personality instead.
The temple of my empire of death.
He said it! So the reason why Sutekh doesn't just kill the Doctor and Ruby right away is because in all of the 50 years of TV stories he's been travelling with the Doctor, he's been a witness to his adventures and wants to know who Ruby's mother is as well. And because he wants to know the answer, he's not going to fully enact his plans. Typing that sentence for this review, I had to go back and reread that a few times because I genuinely could not believe that's actually what the plot of this episode is. But it's true. Play the footage.
She drives us crazy, but Sutekh, oh, he's been riding on the back of the TARDIS beholding all of time and space, and then he can't see one woman. One woman, one singular, mysterious woman. No wonder he's keeping us alive. To figure out the answer, who is she?
So, putting aside the idea that Sutekh would have just ended the universe if goblins hadn't tried to steal Ruby's foster sister on Christmas, prompting the Doctor and Ruby's first meeting, why on earth would Sutekh care about this? Seriously, why would the god of death, who wants nothing more than to end all life, care about the parentage of someone he considers less than an insect? It boggles the mind. But because this episode went to great pains to elaborate that Sutekh has been on board the TARDIS for the past 400 plus episodes...
Every time I landed there, 1999, 1066, 2005...
It naturally leads to asking, why this mystery in particular? Ruby's mother is not the first mystery Sutekh will have seen over the past 50 years. To name just a few, the multiple Clara Oswalds, Bad Wolf, Amy Pond's pregnancy, who was in the university vault and who was the woman in heaven, who is the timeless child, who is the mysterious Doctor incarnation from her origins, what are the Doctor's hidden memories in the fob watch? Are you telling me that Sutekh, a born-again mystery box obsessive, passed on all of those storylines, but saw Ruby's mother outside of the church on Ruby Road and thought, no, this is what I will stop all of my destructive plans for. This is what will make me put my singular goal on hold and keep the Doctor alive so he can figure it out. Except for that time I will try to kill him by swiping him at the time window, but that was just for fun. That was a little treat for me. You know, it could have messed everything up if I misjudged the timing or the distance, but whatever, it's fine. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's not fine. It's not fine, oh my, it's not fine. But I know what's happened here. I know what the intent is. Hardcore fans who this finale is meant to appeal to are meant to spot and acknowledge this long-running history and get hyped and excited, but simultaneously ignore everything that comes with it because Sutekh says the line.
And I find that good.
We touched on this earlier, but if the TARDIS couldn't figure out who Ruby's mother was, UNIT's time window couldn't do it, nor could futuristic databases or the eternal gods of the Pantheon who treat creation as a plaything, there had better be a damn good explanation as to who Ruby's mother is and how she could shield her identity. So, the Doctor, Ruby and Mel escape because the Doctor used Ruby's memories inside the time window to create a memory TARDIS, a hodgepodge of set dressing, props and costumes from Doctor Who's history. While it's cool to see all these props and for Mel to immediately gravitate towards the 6th Doctor's outfit in the corner, it really does just hit home the fact that this season had absolutely no intention long-term of bringing in a new audience. A main pivotal location of this finale is a literal safe space for long-time fans, which our main characters use to escape the planetary devastation across the universe. On its own, we have a nice scene where our lead trio watch Sutekh's dust of death take hold from the TARDIS doors, leading to the Doctor to blame himself for his travels before screaming out into the dying void.
Every world that I ever stood upon, all dead. I did this. I thought it was fun.
After a brief interlude with Sutekh, and side note, I adore the sound mix as he moves the TARDIS in a still and lifeless environment.
Death. Yet, one thing persists.
We then cut to the Doctor an indeterminate amount of time later as he searches for a piece of metal on a dying world, encountering a woman played by Sian Clifford. It's a nice scene, demonstrating the effects of Sutek's death down the family line, non-linearly, killing her child before it reaches her. The Doctor is gifted a metal spoon, which he uses on the TV monitor he yoinked from Unit 2, and I swear this is true, rewatch Pyramids of Mars. The Doctor and Ruby, not Mel because she's taken a nap curled up by the 7th Doctor's outfit, take a break from the plot to get a subscription to BritBox so they can watch episodes from the classic series. And if you think that's an exaggeration, let's talk about this memory TARDIS. Fans in the UK watching Empire of Death for the first time might have already seen this set long before broadcast, because this memory TARDIS played host to a pseudo spin-off called Tales of the TARDIS, a repackaging of iconic classic series stories put on the BBC iPlayer, bookended with scenes featuring actors associated with those stories.
Even more of me!
The 7th Doctor and Ace watched The Curse of Fenric, Stephen and Vicky watched The Time Meddler, etc. One of these was the 15th Doctor and Ruby watching Pyramids of Mars, which is meant to slot into this moment, meaning it is technically canon that our main characters just watched the whole 4-part serial before moving on with the rest of Empire of Death. Oh, and to add salt into the wound for international viewers, this spin-off series wasn't available on Disney+, with only this Pyramids of Mars version getting a home media release on related box sets. I bring this up because it's clear that Russell T Davies really wants to mine audiences' affection for this story. For season 1 of this new era, they've repackaged it, they've done a sequel to it, and they've even made it canon that our main characters literally watched it in their fandom safe space. And yet...
Yeah, I never understood what was all that Egyptian stuff.
Cultural appropriation.
What the fuck, Russell? Are we supposed to love and cherish this story, or are we meant to feel bad about enjoying it while you're making us watch a sequel tribute episode based on it? This line doesn't make sense in universe anyway. In the Whoniverse, the Osirans weren't culturally appropriating Egyptian mythology. The Osirans were the gods the Egyptians worshipped. No, this line only exists to take a pot shot at the creators of the serial in a metatextual capacity, for basing a race of aliens in their science fiction show on a different culture. Cultural appropriation of this kind is a worthwhile discussion to have, but it feels completely disingenuous from an episode that has alienated casual viewers who haven't seen this classic serial to now try and virtue signal against an audience who you're trying to pander to by making a Pyramids of Mars sequel in the first place. Who is this sequel story even for? I'm sorry, Russell, but you've spent the past 2 episodes fawning over this story, oversaw a Tales of the TARDIS omnibus re-edit, introduced the story's villain after 49 years, and even brought back its voice actor, all for the sake of being fan-pleasing, and then you're gonna make that snide comment about the story you're meant to be celebrating? It just reads as a line that was only written to get a half-hearted round of applause at the table read. It's the most boomer, hello fellow kids line Russell's ever written. And then...
And who are they, that woman and the man with the hair?
They just travelled in the TARDIS.
Why? Why does he say this? I'd expect the vague wording if he'd never explained regeneration to Ruby before, but he literally did in the last episode. Why can't he just say, that's me, but a long time ago? How does this jibe with Russell's approach to regeneration in his first era? The 10th Doctor treats his upcoming regeneration like a death where a new person takes over, but it's still the same Time Lord. So why now, 5 incarnations later, does he use language about himself that's even more distant and extreme? But it's like the idea of the Doctor having grandchildren before having children. Why obfuscate this? What is Russell's goal with this? I genuinely don't think there's a goal. It's just confusing dialogue for the sake of being confusing. So Ruby starts asking questions, which causes the monitor to flicker and respond to her. This causes the Doctor to figure out that Sutek's obsessed with learning who Ruby's mother is, and that's why he's kept them alive. And just for a minute, forget about the alienation of uninitiated viewers. Forget the lack of conflict. Forget the terrible fan service. No, this is the main issue at the heart of Empire of Death. It's the Doctor himself. Over the course of this 2-parter, the Doctor doesn't undergo any sort of growth or journey, and doesn't actually learn anything. The Doctor has been travelling across time and space, unwittingly allowing Sutek to start his genocidal endgame, which pays off, leaving the Doctor feeling guilty and despondent. We then cut straight into a vague time skip, and then the Doctor figures out what Sutek's potential weakness is, and then our team go and explore it before managing to defeat Sutek and save the day. The issue here is a structural one. There's nothing guiding or motivating the plot on a character level. It's just a bunch of, and then this happens, so then this happens, leading to this happening. There's no actual arc or journey for our lead characters. The Doctor never has to reckon or deal with his travelling. The Doctor never has to reconsider the way he adventures through time and space. He never has to deal with his insecurities that acts as his emotional nadir for the whole season. Nor is there some outside force that coaxes him into action, like Rose rescuing him as the bad wolf, or him needing to make a sacrifice like Donna's memories. Character-wise, the episodes are void. There's nothing here to engage with. Even in The Wedding of River Song, the Doctor starts taking steps to remove himself from history in response to the silence by faking his death. Obviously, it doesn't last long, but it shows that the events of the story have changed him somewhat. But in Empire of Death, the Doctor doesn't change his approach to travel after Sutek abused it. He doesn't appear to learn anything other than Roger Ap Williams' authoritarian policies might have saved the universe. Wait a minute, I've jumped ahead a bit. Let me back up. So, the incredibly convenient time window monitor points our heroes into the direction of Roger Ap Gwilliam, the antagonist of the episode 73 Yards and future Prime Minister who Ruby was able to stop in the alternative timeline without the Doctor. And the monitor shows the Doctor and Ruby his TV interview with Amol Rajan, where Roger puts his foot in his mouth about firing nukes. Except, that's not the interview we see on the monitor in Empire of Death.
I propose compulsory DNA testing for the entire population.
Roger Ap Gwilliam.
So the big MacGuffin in Empire of Death, the turning point of the big season finale that gives our heroes a chance of stopping this godlike adversary, is a scene that never actually appeared in the episode that this is calling back to, and referencing something that never came up in that same episode. Mandatory DNA testing is never mentioned in 73 Yards. In fact, Roger Ap Gwilliam's depiction in that episode is explicitly as a single-issue candidate who wants to fire nukes, and that's all he's got politically. There's no other way to describe this. Sutek is defeated because the Doctor and Ruby stumble across the equivalent of a DVD extra deleted scene. I honestly feel like I could just end the review there. I really don't feel like there's anything that this episode can do that can top that. It would be like if, say, the 10th Doctor and Rose have no idea how to stop the Daleks and the Cybermen in Canary Wharf in the Series 2 finale. Then all of a sudden, one of the TVs in the Torchwood office turns on and shows them an unseen conversation from the Idiot's Lantern where Mr. Magpie is talking to The Wire about how 3D will be the next big thing for television. And this prompts the Doctor to put on his 3D glasses, and that's how he gets the idea to utilise the Void stuff. If that had happened in 2006, I don't think anyone would actually believe they watched it happen, and it would be universally mocked for decades to come. But that's literally how Empire of Death plays out, with a straight face, and it feels like no one else brings up how insane this part of the episode is. This whole exposition scene is so bad that Mel just gives up and dies during it in order to escape. Okay, slight exaggeration. She's possessed by Sutek, who uses her as a vessel to pursue the Doctor. The group follow the trail to 2046 because Roger, as Prime Minister, enacted mandatory DNA testing for all adults, and that's how they're going to find the identity of Ruby's mother. I know what you're thinking, but one thing at a time, okay? We'll get to it later. To be fair, I think the rising tension during this sequence is really strong. Murray Gold's ambient music is effective. I love the lighting with the hauntingly quiet corridors filled with the dusty remains of the people killed there. And Bonnie Langford, she's so freaking good in this portion of the episode. Not saying she was bad before, in fact her elevating the on-page material has been a consistent part of her portrayal of Mel for almost 40 years, but her acting when possessed by Sutek is so fascinating to watch. I found myself drawn to her performance even when she's in the background, as she and Sutekh start learning more about the mystery they're solving, and you really feel the struggle as she tries to fight off Sutekh's influence. The battle of her mind juxtaposed with Chorus of the Bells echoing the halls while Ruby searches for her mother's name with the DNA sample is surprisingly powerful stuff. But the moment doesn't last, because once the computer completes its search, Sutekh, in control of Mel, interrupts them, demanding the name that comes up.
Now give me the name.
Sutekh, why are you asking, Ruby? You can just possess her like you did with Mel and find out for yourself, can't you? And failing that, just take the monitor off her and read it yourself. It's literally right there in front of you.
Bring me the Time Lord and the child and their precious secret.
Sutekh, it's right there. What are you doing? Whatever, the group are teleported back to Unit HQ so they can show him their findings. Sutekh is able to restrain the Doctor with glowing green energy, a nice visual callback to Pyramids of Mars, and Ruby promises to show him her mother's identity if he lets him go. But once again, Sutekh can read minds. In his original appearance, he's able to break into the TARDIS. He speaks telepathically across time and space and can possess anyone, even the Doctor. And that was Sutekh trapped by the Eye of Horus, where his abilities were limited. Now, in Empire of Death, this is Sutekh at supposedly full strength, unbound. But no, he's less an Egyptian deity and more akin to Jeremy Kyle, who needs to be handed the DNA test results before he can roll the credits. It's a mockery that he can be stomped simply by facing a monitor away from his field of view.
Waiting for so long.
We're just normal men.
What do you mean, normal men?
We're just innocent men.
Ruby uses the distraction of her dropping and breaking the monitor to hook a rope found in the memory TARDIS to his collar. The Doctor uses a whistle to cue the TARDIS to fire its deadly laser beam. Oh no, I read that right, that is what happens. The TARDIS's deadly laser beam, presumably killing Harriet, but who cares about her anyway? It shoots Sutekh's crotch and blasts itself across the room, and thanks to the anti-mav gloves, the Doctor and Ruby latch Sutekh to the TARDIS and give him a ride in the time vortex. Two quick things. One, why did Sutekh send his servants Mel and Susan to walk very slowly across the room to stop the Doctor and Mel, even though he can incapacitate them with his mind or use his dust of death at long range? And two, why is the Doctor's plan to kill Sutekh to drag him through the same time vortex where Sutekh found his newfound strength? He's been living in the vortex for over 400 episodes. How is this meant to kill him? Whatever, so Sutekh gets dragged through the vortex, his claws tearing across it, which somehow brings everyone back to life. Mel, Susan, Kate, Ibrahim, Morris, even the Vlinks is back, who I'm convinced was only introduced in this series so that Sutekh could sit in its place in an earlier draft as a callback to Pyramids of Mars that never ended up happening. And I know what you're all asking. What about Colonel Chidozi?
Who did not die? Oh, isn't that swell?
We even have Cherry Sunday and Mrs. Flood back. Knowing who Mrs. Flood turns out to be in the end, this line makes absolutely zero sense in hindsight. God, Russell really was just making these series arcs up as he went along, wasn't he? Jesus Christ. The unit family step outside to look at nothing, as Kate and Ibrahim hold hands and exchange an affectionate look. These two characters haven't exchanged a single line of dialogue this entire era. All the dead worlds are brought back, but the Doctor has unfinished business.
We fought a monster, and now I must become a monster.
I love this moment because does Ruby really have nothing to say to that? Like, does she really not have any questions or reaction to a line like that? Nope, obviously not, because as we established earlier, this season is absolutely petrified of conflict from its lead characters.
I must become a monster.
Stop, don't come back.
So she just lets the Doctor slowly walk away to kill Sutekh. even though there's not really any sort of moral grey area here. I don't know, maybe I'm not woke enough, but I think killing the demigod that wants nothing more than to destroy all life on Earth and has proven that it will do that at the first opportunity, I think that's a good thing, actually.
Because if you're dead, then I must represent life. Surely that's why I am. Life.
I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
Because you turned me into this. I am the one that brings death.
Yeah, that line doesn't really work after a montage of the Doctor bringing back every single life in existence. Sorry, but this attempt at adding moral complexity at the last hurdle just doesn't remotely land. It feels so inauthentic. Whatever. So Sutekh is killed by the time vortex, somehow. Ruby goes to comfort the Doctor by the TARDIS door, but the episode is so afraid of having any drama that it preemptively starts fading to black before she even reaches him. And now we're in the epilogue. Susan Triad is still alive, and Kate, having absolutely no standards for hiring at UNIT, immediately tries to bring her on board. Thankfully, Kate is interrupted from breaking more child labour regulations by the DNA results from 2046 coming through UNIT, confirming Ruby's mother to be an ordinary human. She was 15 when she had Ruby, escaped an abusive partner, and left Ruby at the church. So, putting aside the fact that Roger Ap Williams' fascist-leaning mandatory DNA testing saved the day here, why couldn't anyone learn her identity before this moment? The TARDIS, the future ambulances, the time window, Sutekh himself were unable to do what a simple DNA database from 2046 Earth could do. How does this work on any level?
She was important because we think she's important. It's how everything happens. Every war, every religion, every love story. We invest things with significance. While the whole of creation is turning around her, it made her sheer existence more powerful than Time Lords and gods.
No. You don't just get to create a mystery box, make it textually so vital to the show that it's the opening scene of the series and the inciting incident of numerous story threads, pepper in dozens of mysteries on top of that to string audiences along for a full season, only to turn around at the end and talk about how the existence of that mystery in and of itself is the reason why it couldn't be solved. And while we're here...
That is more than just a glitch. It's like she's shadowed.
So that was just a fucking lie then. The episode just lied about one of its mysteries. And if we're taking the text at face value, why was the Doctor and Ruby's mystery the only one invested with significance to the extent that Sutekh couldn't find the solution? Ruby's surely not the only foundling with questions about their parentage in 2024. Surely there's someone else on the planet who wants questions in their life answered. Heck, Sutekh even killed Mrs. Flood, and she's a walking, talking mystery box in this series. But that didn't save her. Now don't misunderstand me, I have no issue in principle with Ruby's mother just being an ordinary person. A teenage girl who wasn't able to look after a child so gave her up for adoption. That's an effective, grounded and powerful story. But everything, and I mean everything, surrounding this mystery this season was building upon this mystery, the answer to this mystery, being anything but what it was actually revealed to be. Russell has elaborated that this story was his response to the sequel trilogy of Star Wars, where the main protagonist Rey, played by Daisy Ridley, is desperate to find out where she came from and validate her ambitions to be special. But it's revealed in The Last Jedi that she's not special. Her parents were low-life criminals who sold her. She wasn't a Skywalker, or a Solo, or a Palpatine, yet. But she doesn't let that define her moving forward, and it's really effective in a universe where so much emphasis is placed on heritage and bloodlines. And for our purposes in comparison, Rey's parentage in The Last Jedi lined up perfectly with what we learned about her up until that point. That's not the case with Ruby's ordinary, non-special heritage in this season of Doctor Who, and an entity like the Force doesn't exist in this universe to single out people like it did with Rey. It's like Russell just saw the ordinary person aspect of Rey's character, and just decided to ignore literally everything else surrounding that. And it's an astonishing showcase of media illiteracy from someone who's normally pretty good at picking up on these trends in film and TV. But okay, Ruby's mum is ordinary, and that's fine, because ordinary people are special and important and significant. Except for Harriet, though. Probably worked at UNIT for several years, made a lot of friends with the people there. Maybe she even had a partner and kids. And she's just killed by the TARDIS laser, and no one brings it up. The Doctor proclaimed how terrible he was that he had to kill Sutekh, but Harriet, that doesn't faze him at all. But whatever, Ruby's mum is normal, okay. But if that's the case, why did the memory change? In the church on Ruby Road, Ruby's mother just walks away without looking back. In Space Babies, the Doctor remembers this encounter, but it changes and she points towards him. In the time window in The Legend of Ruby Sunday, despite the CCTV footage capturing the original version of events, it's also changed and she points at the Doctor again, and she even stops to cry as well. But the Doctor has figured it out.
She wasn't pointing at me. Because we cleaned up the VHS. Behind me was that lamppost. It was a signpost. She was pointing at the name of the road. She was naming you.
But that's not what we saw in the church on Ruby Road. She didn't point. It literally didn't happen. This isn't nitpicking. This isn't me overthinking. This isn't pedantry. It literally did not happen. And going back to the church on Ruby Road and all flashbacks prior to this reveal, a signpost is never shown. It's never in frame, not even in the background, because the TARDIS is blocking it from sight, except in the few frames when the TARDIS dematerializes and we can see there's not even a lamppost behind the Doctor at all. And folks, I've literally been to the location, okay? There's no lamppost there. Don't make me go back and double check. Is that why they had to add it into the time window? So they could add it in post for this single shot? So they knew they were cheating. There's no other explanation for this. Just like the audience never saw the surname of Harriet Arbinger before the twist reveal, or Roger never talking about a DNA testing policy in 73 Yards, the audience are never shown anything to allow them to piece together this mystery themselves, either as a way to predict the resolution or put the pieces together after the fact. It's just a reveal built on straight up deception, as well as sheer bad writing that a 15-year-old wearing a cloak would dramatically point to a lamppost that's hiding behind a police telephone box that no one else is there to see in order to name her baby. This discrepancy is so obvious and so huge that the episode's target novelization from script editor Scott Handcock actually rewrites this element of the story. This novel is otherwise a really faithful adaptation in every other respect, but this is the part that it puts its foot down for. The novelization tries to retcon the time window showing Ruby's mum pointing at the street sign because it was an emotional memory bolstered by the time window showing her mother's desire to name Ruby, so it wasn't literally her pointing at a road sign. But even that doesn't make sense because the memory changing happened in Space Babies without the involvement of the time window. So even the year later attempted retcon to try and fix this issue after the fact doesn't make any sense. That's how bad this mystery resolution is. And before you ask, I checked the target novel of Space Babies as well, written by Alison Rumfitt. The memory changes in that adaptation as well, with Ruby's mum pointing. I wasn't expecting an adaptation of a different episode from a different writer to reflect the retcon, obviously, but I just thought I'd cover my bases.
Why Louise Miller wore an ancient medieval cloak to the church?
Yeah.
I think that's time shrouding her.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that.
Yeah. Oh, that's
We actually, no, and in fact, we
That's
asked her to be
good.
shrouded.
Yeah.
Because she had to be for the sake of the story.
There's no other way to view this as actively insulting the audience, and I know that sounds dramatic and mean, but I genuinely don't know how else to take this. Russell created a mystery box, hyped it up for over 9 episodes, only to end up dismissing the idea of mysteries mattering, and then actively lied and mocked the setup and clues to said mysteries along the way. If you were one of the viewers outside of the UK introduced to Doctor Who for the first time through this series, and you stuck it out to the end, why on earth would you ever want to watch another episode of this? Why would you even bother getting invested in any more mysteries, like Mrs. Flood or the Boss? Who cares who they are? Because everything we've seen up until now could end up not mattering when it's time to reveal who they are. As far as I'm concerned, the downfall of this era of Doctor Who was assured at this moment. This open, flagrant disregard and disrespect of audiences' time, investment and intelligence effectively made Doctor Who, under this current regime, a dead show walking in regards to its reputation. And we're still not done. The Doctor drops Ruby off at a cafe so she can meet her mum, Louise, played by Faye McKeever. Ruby orders a coffee, and thank God she wasn't in Wales for this scene.
What can I get? Oh, cappuccino, please. Can I pay with my phone? Can you what? It's sort of like online banking, but the phone can transfer money from my account into...
Yes, you can pay with your phone.
Oh, sorry.
And yes, this scene is beautifully directed. It's acted with such authenticity. The kitchen sink drama, the grounded nature of it all. God, I just wish I cared at this point. Louise is brought into the Sunday family without any conflict or drama. Naturally, what else were you expecting? And the Doctor and Ruby end up saying goodbye here. Ruby wants to keep travelling, but she decides to stay at home and meet her father and be part of a new family.
I've shown you monsters and planets, legends. But this, one of your adventures, just beginning.
That's a gorgeous sentiment. No, I'm serious. I have no notes.
Your own granddaughter. He left her and never went back.
And that was my mistake. Maybe I'll find her again one day. But you, Ruby Sunday, I will see again. Because you changed me. I talk about family in a way that I never did before.
Okay, for this one, I do have notes. Firstly, no you don't. You've not talked about family or your relationship with them at all, apart from acknowledging that they exist. This has not happened, not on screen at least, maybe during the 6-month time skip that audiences never saw after Space Babies, and that's not even me making a flippant joke. The day was saved in this episode because of a 73 yards deleted scene, so all bets are off here. This is why I completely reject the argument that this finale is just another Russell T Davies finale. Prior finales could be sloppy, melodramatic and have undercooked ideas, but they actually had arcs and growth for their characters. Basic cause and effect storytelling was never out of play in those episodes. Sacrifices had to be made to defeat the villains. Mysteries unravel, revealing new challenges and conflicts that our leads need to confront and work through to win the day. We learn where the Bad Wolf words came from and who put them there. We learn what Torchwood is. We learn who Mr. Saxon was and why the bees disappeared, along with several planets. Empire of Death doesn't even come close to the level of storytelling or closure that Russell T Davies has done before on this very show. The Doctor can't even bring himself to respond to Ruby saying she loves him. What on earth has he learned? How has he changed or grown or opened up more than he had before? He hasn't. It's blatant character regression, dressed up like a crescendo of pathos and profound drama. We know that he never does try and find Susan, or find a new extended family after this. His next on-screen companion is someone who literally cannot be brought home, so he has to keep her on board, so we know that he's not going to evolve after this episode. There's absolutely nothing here. This finale was so bad, and its lack of character arcs or coherent plotting over the season, including but not limited to the actual order of the episodes themselves, was so egregious that it genuinely prompted fan theories that Mrs. Flood is actually the god of stories, manipulating events this series to make them as shallow and incoherent as possible for some elaborate plan. Imagine a series finale being so bad for such obvious reasons that fans try to headcanon reasons as to why it was bad on purpose. Real Apple Tree Yard is the secret good fourth Sherlock episode energy to it. I don't even know how I can wrap this video up.
It's very much kind of internet age storytelling where...
And was that deliberate?
Yes, you just hope it'll generate content.
For 6 weeks plus a Christmas special, we actually had a pretty good streak of solid, though not particularly groundbreaking Doctor Who episodes. A few stumbles here and there, but it was okay, easygoing viewing that could draw in a new audience. But then, The Legend of Ruby Sunday goes out of its way to throw all of that potential goodwill away with absolutely no character work to speak of and terrible plotting, all in the service of building up to a cliffhanger that will leave 99% of viewers scratching their heads. and Empire of Death with its awful characterization, questionable attempts at fan service, awkward pacing, baffling lore drops, and a stubborn refusal to pay back fan investment in the ongoing mysteries ensures that even the 1% of viewers who know what Pyramids of Mars is will leave dissatisfied. And most insultingly of all, there's absolutely no actual message or mission statement to be found here. From the Church of Ruby Road to Empire of Death, there's no arc, there's no growth for its characters, there's no conflict, no journey, no through line, other than stories. They exist, don't they?
It's how everything happens. Every war, every religion, every love story. We invest things with significance.
I mean, that's technically a theme, but only in the most superficial sense. The spaceship in Space Babies gave the babies a storybook villain to help their development. Music is a form of storytelling, I guess, for the Devil's Chord. So is religion, and how it can be abused in Boom. 73 Yards had Welsh myths as the instigator, and the citizens of Finetime used the stories of their ancestors in Dot and Bubble to justify their supremacy, and the Cholder in Rogue are obsessed with drama-filled stories to the extent that they want to roleplay them. But is that really all that's going on here? I already feel like I'm reaching here trying to find some sort of rhyme and reason to this. There's the interpretation that Sutekh could represent the continuity-obsessed viewer, a relic of the show's past that acts as a destructive force in pursuit of answers to the ongoing mystery. But the reason there's an ongoing mystery is because Russell T Davies wrote one, and Russell seems to be banking on fans recognizing Sutekh and having knowledge of Pyramids of Mars to carry the finale, so how can it have any sort of high ground to criticize continuity-obsessed fans? Most of Empire of Death literally takes place in a memory TARDIS. The Doctor and Ruby curl up around the fire and stop the plot dead to watch classic Doctor Who as a companion introduced in 1986 embraces a costume from a bygone era. Heck, the most prominent prop of the episode is the 4x3 TV monitor that the Doctor takes everywhere with him. I didn't even notice until my latest viewing, but look, it's that same monitor that he takes to 2046 to get Ruby's DNA results brought up. Sutekh isn't the toxic obsessive clinging to the show's past. If anything, it's the Doctor, our hero, who can't use his old sonic screwdriver because it might be mistaken for a gun, but can equip his TARDIS with a death laser and get child soldiers to do his bidding with no pushback. This discrepancy between a series with basically no conflict or drama or subtext to speak of, presumably to try and appeal to a younger audience wanting good vibes and escapism from a harsh world.
But I know what you mean on a bigger picture. It's like, that's what I was saying about Doctor Who being fun. It's my job to look at where we are, how we feel, look at the news you're reporting this morning, what a difficult, complicated world we live in. And so I genuinely looked at Doctor Who this time around and thought, it's time for fun. It's madder than it used to be. I think this version, it's wilder. It's funnier. Yeah, it is. It's kind of bigger and broader. And I don't mean just as an escape, because I think it does have things to say about the world. But I think a lot of science fiction gets very dark and heavy, and producers like me will sit on settees like this and say, oh yes, we're much darker this year. And we're going really deep, it's a deep dive into the characters' souls. And that's all very well. But actually with Doctor Who, I'd say, come and have fun.
And you know what? That's kind of a noble endeavour. But that really, really clashes with this finale that uses the past of the show as the be-all and end-all for the story's enjoyment. I have a friend who summed up this era of the show perfectly. The Bad Wolf era is a show made for 10-year-olds who've been watching Doctor Who for 50 years. And that perfect revelation completely deflated and depressed me about this whole enterprise. A conflict-free, drama-averse season acting as a Trojan horse for potential new viewers across the world, all in the aid of reminding a handful of already existing fans that Pyramids of Mars was great, and to pursue that goal at the expense of everything else. I sincerely can't think of a bigger waste of everyone's time. But anyway, join me next time, because it's time for another Christmas special. Once again, the Doctor is travelling alone and stops off at the Time Hotel in another madcap adventure written by Stephen Moffat in Joy to the World. I'll see you all next time. Hey folks, thank you so much for watching this video. We're at the end of Season 1, or Series 14 of Doctor Who. All 8 episodes of the season, given in-depth, full-blown edited reviews. A long time coming, I apologise. There's been an awful lot going on in my life recently and on the channel and work and stuff like that, and also we're about to regenerate this space, so this could be one of the last times you see these cupboards and these walls, so, you know, we'll see what the future has in store. But thank you so much for watching. Once again, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the like button, comment down below, really helps me out. Also, helping me out are my members and my patrons who help to keep the lights on here, and I want to give a shout out to these particular members and patrons: Chiba City Blues, Daniel Davis, DC63 Productions, Air Hoovian, Gareth Currath, High Lord Wolnir, Jack D. Evans, John, Joseph Adams, Lard Dragon Ezra, Leela, Maria Bergman, Marianne Mogensen, Miranda Logan, Palex, Phantom Forge, Raven Woods, Retrospective Raccoon, Ray Sprinkle, Reese Lloyd, RJL, Ross A.T. Stewart, The Brit Sniper, The Scarlet Watcher, and Batamoji Dan Batamoji. Thanks so much to all of my members and patrons for helping to keep the lights on here. Thanks to you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.